Hi, and welcome to our visit to the wonderful city of York. It's 36 hours in the middle of summer. In case you didn't know, York is in the northeast of England, a little under 2 hours from London's King's Cross station. We were only here for 36 hours and we managed to pack a fair bit in, but not everything we wanted. So without further ado, let's go and explore. We're going to start at the North Eastern Railway's War Memorial, close to York's railway station. This commemorates the 2,200 souls from the railway that lost their lives in the Great War. And it's adjacent to a point where we can join York's historic city walls. The story starts nearly 2,000 years ago with the Roman city of Eboracum, stepping through time past the Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, the Normans. They also played a part in the English Civil War, and now they give you great views of the city of York. Of course, through time they've been damaged and repaired, fell into disrepair and fixed. Like the city, they tell us a story that's 2,000 years in the making. They don't completely encircle the city, but there's plenty to explore, along with the city gates that punctuate them. Here we have Bootham Bar, which would have been one of the main four entrances to the Roman fortress, although this structure dates from medieval times, around the 12th to 13th century. As I said, it offers unique views of the city, perhaps better without the scaffolding. We're in the northern quadrant of the old city, with views of York Minster. We'll take a brief look at York Minster later, and any places or additional useful information I'll add as a link in the description below. When I see a view like this, I do wonder how it would have looked through time. Now a quick word, if you enjoy this video then why not give us a like, and if you enjoy my style of video then why not consider subscribing and hit that notification bell. We're now at Monk Bar, which is the largest and probably the most ornate of the bars, and dates from the 14th century. It has rooms on the upper level, and these are more clearly seen from the side. Our walk south from here leads us to a break in the city walls at Judi and Fossgate. From here we head along St Saviourgate, past Lady Hewley's almshouses, and on our way to Fossgate. Fossgate was the entrance to the merchants' quarter, which probably started life serving the Roman fort, but certainly developed in the medieval period. There's not much medieval these days. We have the Cosy Club in the former 19th century electric cinema, and then we have the 17th century entrance to the Merchants' Hall. Then we discover where Fossgate gets its name from, the River Foss. This will flow into the River Ouse, which is York's other river. We've now transferred magically from Foss Bridge to Piccadilly, where we get to see the Merchants' Hall in all its glory. Dating from the 14th century in places, this is an impressive display of medieval York. However, if you think of medieval York, then you're gonna think of the Shambles. This former butcher's district, with its narrow lanes and historic buildings, was actually recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086. But what you see before you is largely rebuilt in the 14th century. But the butcher's shops have now made way for a unique selection of stores, as well as a shrine to St Margaret of Clitheroe. Unusual, I know, but there's also a shop that sells wands, inspired by Harry Potter. Whichever way you look at it, it's very touristy, and you can expect to pay a premium. But it really has to be a must-see when you're in York. Just a word of warning though, it can get very busy. Just take a peek at Google Street View to see what I mean. So the Shambles is just one historic lane, but don't worry, there's plenty more history to explore in York. Head to Stonegate and you'll find Cater Wolfhart, the all-round Christmas store, and at the time of recording the only one in the UK. And these historic lanes seem to attract a lot of niche vendors. Around every corner there's something new, like Barley Hall, which can give you the taste of a medieval townhouse, which I think for us is going to be another one we add to our next visit list, which also includes the York Viking Centre. 36 hours is not enough. We're into the late evening and the Shambles market next to the Shambles has gone to sleep. But don't worry, we will return. And what we find is a very modern market sited on the historic medieval Shambles market. There's an eclectic mix of food outlets and market stalls, but you can also find a butcher's, supplying local produce, as well as a fishmonger's. As I said, it's an eclectic mix. Now let's talk about food and drink, and I'll start with the pubs. From the historic of the Bluebell, the Old White Swan, Ye Old Star Inn, and the Guy Fawkes, birthplace of the man himself, to the more modern, the Last Drop Inn and the craft beer haven of Brew York. But there's also great food, from Tommy Banks' Michelin-starred routes to the dynamic Sparks York, with a variety of food and drink outlets in upcycled shipping containers, a stone's throw from the Merchants' Hall, and of course everything in between. You'll find what's perfect for you and ticks your box. So we're now going to pop out of the Shambles market and onto Parliament Street, which is another semi-pedestrianised thoroughfare, which is a little more mainstream. A stroll down here will take us towards Piccadilly and the parish church of All Saints pavement in York. If we'd turned right out of the Shambles market, we'd have found Betty's Tea Room on St Helens Square. You'll also find the Ivy Restaurant from the Brands collection, as well as St Helens Church. It's a short walk from here to Duncan Place and the Dean's Court Hotel. Why are the parking restrictions, you may ask? Well, we're a stone's throw from a cathedral, and the answers come the next morning. It's for the filming of the Channel 4 detective series, Patience. It's on its second season, and if you haven't seen it, I'd urge you to give it a try. It features Ella Macy Purvis, Mark Benton, and for this series Jessica Hines. The rest of the cast is also superb and create a really wonderful character-based drama. Surprisingly, there's not more filmed in York. It was interesting to see the professionals at work and how a 20-second clip took 10 minutes to capture. I know how that feels at times. Anyway, enough of the TV series Patience. Let's admire York Minster a little later in the evening, before we step inside to explore. As we take our first look at the nave, I have to say this is an abridged view. We have a full video and I'll pop that up at the end if you want more detail. There is a fee to visit as a tourist. There's no cost to attend a service, and I'll include a link in the description with more details. As I mentioned, this is York Minster, and Minster is an Anglo-Saxon name, but this building started life in 1080 as a Norman place of worship. However, this Gothic masterpiece came to life in 1215, with work starting in 1220, although, as to be expected, alteration and modifications were carried out into the 15th century. And as the recently restored Great East window attests to, restoration is constant. Built to rival Canterbury Cathedral in the south, and as we descend to the crypt, there's proof of that. A stroll through and we discover the tomb of St William, canonised in 1226, a magnet for pilgrims and a rival to Thomas à Becket, who was martyred in Canterbury Cathedral and canonised in 1173. One of my favourite parts of York Minster is the chapter house, where the clergy of the diocese would meet. To me, it's an architectural masterpiece. Just look at those windows and that ceiling. Hard to think this was built in the 13th century. From the outside, take some time to admire the second largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe. I think it's okay to interchange Minster and cathedral. Anyway, from here we're going to stroll through Dean's Park, and meet a famous little bear. You may be lucky and get him on his own, but normally Paddington has a few friends in tow. It's only a short walk from here to our next slice of history, and that's the Treasurer's House. It's a National Trust property, so free to visit for members, otherwise there's a fee. There's the usual link in the description below. You have to book a tour, which takes around about an hour, maybe longer, and the other thing is there's no video allowed, so what I have for you is a photo montage. It's a 17th century rebuild of a 16th century home for the Treasurer of York. However, what you see is the home of Frank Green, a wealthy 19th century industrialist who created a private collection of objects that he took a shine to. Now, rather than place his collection in a museum, Frank decided to create a domestic setting for them, and here we have it. Of course, it wasn't open to the public, but his select group of friends, which included the famous actress Ellen Terry, whose home in Kent we discovered when we visited Small Hive Place just outside Tenterton. Other famous guests were the Prince of Wales, Princess Alexander, and their daughter Princess Victoria, who stayed for 3 days in 1900. With Frank's health suffering, he decided to move to Somerset and bequeath the Treasurer's House and its contents to the National Trust in 1920. As we head back to the Minster, let's take a quick look at Roman Britain. Opposite the southern side of the Minster is this column that would have formed part of the Roman headquarters, built over 1700 years ago. It was here in AD 306 that Constantine the Great was proclaimed emperor by his troops after the death of his father. Constantine converted to Christianity and is said to be the first Roman Christian emperor. This changed Roman and European history, leading to the Christian Roman Empire. Walking round to the eastern end of the Minster, you come across the Instagrammable York sign. Shame about the council van in the background. We've arrived at College Green, which, apart from the Minster, is flanked by St William's College. Built in the 15th century as a grand residence for priests, known as the Vicar's Corral, its striking timber frame facade reflects the wealth and importance of the church at the time. The college is only open to the public on York Open Days. The sundial column completes the medieval feel, but it's only a short walk from here and you're on Deansgate and Goodramgate. It's fair to say York likes a gate. And it's a great city to explore on foot because it's relatively flat. And as I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of places to stop for refreshments. Then, almost to contradict myself, I'd transport you to York Castle, or Clifford's Tower, which stands on a 15 metre or 50 foot mound, and it gives you great views over the city. But for the best views, it has to be the Minster Central Tower at 70 metres or 230 foot. We skirt around a section of the city walls you can't actually walk on until we cross the River Foss. No time to stop at one of York's 2 Weatherspoons. We're making our way towards the Fishergate postern tower. And we're making our way here to find the last resting place of a notorious criminal, Dick Turpin. Why is there something glamorous about these 18th century bandits? I blame Stand and Deliver by Adam and the Ants, and a misspent youth. Perhaps a little more mainstream, we have the York Art Gallery, opposite the Bootham Bar. Next to the York Library and Archive, we have the ruins of St Leonard's Hospital. To take a closer look, we should step into York Museum Gardens. So St Leonard's Hospital dates from the 11th century, just after the Norman conquest of England, built on an earlier Anglo-Saxon structure linked to the nearby St Mary's Abbey. It was not a hospital in modern terms, and it once housed the sick and the poor, reflecting medieval beliefs that care, prayer and shelter mattered more than medicine. The surviving undercroft is the most striking feature, with its heavy columns and vaulted ceilings designed to store food and supplies for hundreds of residents. In the park you'll also find the Multangular Tower, and it's the best example of standing Roman remains in York. A little further into the park and you'll discover York Museum in the shadow of the remains of St Mary's Abbey. Built in the 1830s, it is one of England's oldest purpose-built museums, and it will take you through thousands of years of York's history. A slice of English history is on open display in the former ruins of St Mary's Abbey. Founded in 1088 by Benedictine monks, it grew to become one of the richest and most powerful monasteries in England. In the ruins you can see the scale of it. The Abbey was dissolved in 1539 during Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries, leaving it abandoned and stripped of its riches. Today these ruins stand as a powerful reminder of medieval faith, ambition and royal power, right in the heart of York. The stroll through the gardens leads us to our next treasure, the 14th century Hospitium. Once again, nothing to do with a modern hospital, more about being hospitable. It was built as a guest house providing accommodation for important visitors, pilgrims and officials who came to the Abbey. Today it's used for events and private hire, from wedding receptions and private functions to exhibitions and public events. It's then a short walk through some beautifully manicured gardens to the edge of the River Ouse and the Dame Judi Dench Walk, named after the great actress who was born and brought up in the Heworth district of the city of York. If you want a nice relaxing way to discover York, why not take a river cruise through the city to see it from a different perspective? We're making our way back to the Lendal Bridge that we crossed at the beginning of the video. And here we stumble across another indication for a site we didn't see, the York Railway Museum. I wanted to visit but appreciated time was not on our side. Another one for next time. We're now taking a little 10-minute walk to another site. No, not York Gin, Lady Pecket's yard. This little alleyway was not even on our radar. It was a chance conversation with a local who said, "It's worth checking out if you like historic locations." And he was right. Easily overlooked, this little medieval passage once again transports you back in time through York's history. As we now wander north out Colliergate, if we were to have head south we'd be back on Fossgate, but we're making our way back to York Minster while I summarise our 36 hours. Firstly, we had a great time and saw so much, but we could have easily spent a further 2 nights here. It's a charming, friendly city with plenty of character. Of course, like any city, there can be those that make it less enjoyable for others, but isn't that always the case? I think it's fair to say it's a haven for those who love history, and we've only scratched the surface. Again, we would have loved to have visited the York Viking Centre, but once again, one for another time. And I know we'll be back, and I probably won't leave it 25 years this time. History aside, York is a vibrant, exciting city. I think its student population helps with that, and you'll be able to find your sweet spot. I don't think York will rush you, and maybe that's the problem. So just one last little glimpse at another piece of history. Opposite the western end of York Minster, Precinct Court. Another little nook to explore when you visit. Anyway, it's now time to wrap up. I hope you like what we put together. Please leave us a comment, we'd appreciate that. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and happy travels.